I'm obviously, so I love personally when I talk to people, and I think that we have a very different approach to not just kind of the management of your own identity, your own sort of control over to what extent you feel maybe defined or not defined by other people. And something that I've always thought looking at your work is that you seem very in control of how you perceive yourself or how you define yourself. I personally still feel very out of control of that to a large extent.
In what sense? What a fascinating observation.
Well, for example, I had mentioned earlier that a lot of our audience has a very difficult time separating their personal identity from the amount of money that they make or have.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to be mine. But I definitely feel that in other ways. Like, for example, my professional sense of identity or satisfaction is extremely dependent on other people, even people that I don't work with, like my own family members, like to what extent they think I'm, my job is real.
Right,
stuff
right,
like
right.
that. Working on the internet is even more complicated. They're like, what's a podcast?
Yeah. We've all
totally.
heard that. Yeah.
But I feel like I'm curious how you have, and maybe it's just a perception that you don't feel is accurate, but how you've managed in your own life to make sure that you're sort of the locus of not only your self-worth and identity, but also these outside factors. Like, to your point, a writer doesn't make probably as much money as a lot of people think they do. But whether or not you're making, a ton of money or you're on the bestseller list, as you said, you would be a writer regardless.
Yes.
And I'm curious, what are strategies that you've found to really center those feelings in yourself and those senses of identity?
Well, I think one thing, it is really helpful to kind of know what you want. And it sounds like what could be easier than to know what you want? You just hang out with yourself all day long. What do you want? But it's actually, I think, very, very difficult because a lot of times we're swayed by what we think we should want or what other people want us to want or what we wish we would want, and I started out as a lawyer basically for all the wrong reasons. It's a good education. I'm good at research and writing. My dad's a really happy lawyer. I can always change my mind later. It's a great preparation. So I went and I had a great experience in law. I ended up clerking for Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. So I don't regret any of it. It was all great. But I went there for a very default. I just went because I couldn't think of it. I just didn't know what else to do with myself. I did not mindfully go. I didn't choose to go. But then with writing, it was like I was seized with the desire to write a book, a particular book, which ended up being my first book. And so I just felt so certain because I knew this was what I wanted. And I think, some people really do have that, doctors feel this way. I met a physical therapist who felt this way. I was reading I went to one of these fancy artsy circuses. Like my family, for some reason, we go to artsy circuses, and you read the playbill, and it's clear that people feel compelled to become jugglers. That sounds funny, but it's really true. People feel like this enormous. They're like, I literally ran away to join the circus at age 15 because I couldn't help myself. I just felt so drawn to the circus. And so I feel like maybe that made my sense of identity easier because that was just such an overwhelming thing. And then I was able to do that. I think sometimes people feel this compulsion, but then for whatever reason, they're not able to follow it.
Do you feel that having had that career as a lawyer, which was obviously not a fit after a time, made it easier to feel so certain in your identity as a writer with or without maybe the more traditional success?
I think what it gave me a sense of confidence in myself.
Right.
And I wrote a book called The Four Tendencies, and it's all about this personality
framework.
I know. Yeah. Whether people are upholders, questioners, obligers, or rebels. And we'll get into all that. But one of the things, I'm an upholder in this framework. And one of the things about upholders is they're really good at meeting outer expectations and they're really good at meeting inner expectations. And I'm a person who can really keep promises to myself. I can rely on myself. I can rely on myself more than I can rely on anybody else in my life. And what I realized is that most people don't feel that way. They don't 100% feel like they can rely on themselves. And I feel like law was really, really hard. I did a lot of things that were really, really hard to do. And I did them. And because I was like, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And so I was like, I am going to go to the bookstore and buy a book called How to Write and Sell Your Nonfiction Proposal. And I will just follow the directions because I don't know what else to do. And so I did.
Oh my God.
And then it worked. You know what I mean?
But
great. I was like, I am the kind. But so what I knew was I didn't know if I could get an agent. I didn't know if I could sell a book. I didn't know if anybody would pay me to write a book. All I knew is I want to write this book. I'll do it for free because I want to do it so badly. and I know that I can write a book and follow the instructions and see what happens and hope for the best. And that's what I did.